have Bijan Robinson here. So
really,
yes,
he is number 2 overall for me.
oh wow, I knew we were gonna have. I have 2 running backs above him. Um, so far, in my opinion, it seems like Michael Penix is an improvement for this offense. It's really early for that to be like a statement that I'm going to continue to feel. But it's really hard to argue that no matter who's back there, Bijan Robinson is not really good. He's 4th among running backs in total opportunities this season, including rushes and receptions, and he has 63% of the team's red zone carries. There's still the off Tyler Algier appearances, but he really has solidified himself. He's 3rd among running backs in receptions, and there's no hiccup to his game that I'm going to sit here and critique. I just have him 7th here because it's Atlanta. I need to see a little more out of Atlanta. They should be good again next year, or at least be competitive. But those things are always current to change, and that's really about all the reason I have him there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Penix has shown me enough to where I see this being a very competent situation next year. How good remains to be seen, but I think it'll be a perfectly competent situation. You said it, 3rd in the NFL in receptions, and he is one of the few guys that can be 3rd in receptions, but also do it all between the tackles and on the goal line if you need him to. I think for my money, he's probably the 2nd best running back in the NFL right now. I think you have to put Saquon 1 because he just had 2,000 yards rushing, but I think Bijan is probably 2 or maybe 3.
I can't believe we're going to disagree on who I have it for.
I think we can probably have a little bit more of a meta running back and receiver conversation in a minute as this unfolds. I did bring some stats from this year that we can talk about, but yeah, I just think like he's the RB4 this year. He's had, like a lot of these young guys, 3 straight games of 20 or more points. These have been 3 of his best 5 fantasy performances of his career in a row right here. Obviously, very short career. But the only issue is Tyler Algier. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I think Bijan is great. I have him at 2.
Number 4 for me is Jahmyr Gibbs.
He's my 3. So I have him higher than you, but lower on the running back, Rick.
Okay. So I labeled him, it's kind of a joke, but he's like the highest in handcuff that has ever existed in fantasy football.
Yeah, I mean, I told if David Montgomery just didn't exist, he'd be the 1-1 going into next year.
So like a fun stat, and part of the reason he's ranked over Bijan for me is that I think there's more upside to Jahmyr Gibbs still. Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson over the last 2 seasons are separated by 3 PPR points. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs is the only player in the NFL to go over 70 scrimmage yards in every game this season. So even in games where David Montgomery is healthy, Jahmyr Gibbs is still producing at the most consistent floor of any running back. And
I would be curious. I don't have the stat, but my guess is if you looked at like 15 or 20 yard runs, if you looked at that stat, he would rank at or near the top this year specifically, but just in the last 2 years. And then when you rip off a 20-yard run basically every game, you're going to have a very safe like 80 to 90 yard floor at the running back position.
Yeah, and this is no discount to David Montgomery, who I think is a good football player.
Yeah, he should probably be a 3rd round pick next year.
Yeah, well, he's gotten worse. So over the last 2 seasons, this year, his yards per carry went down, his forced tackle rate went down, his broken tackle rate went down. This isn't me like saying Jahmyr Gibbs is going to come out and play 90% of their games because David Montgomery is cooked, but it is me saying like we now know exactly what it looks like when David Montgomery is not on the field, and it's 20-plus points every week for Jahmyr Gibbs. He did that for 3 straight weeks.
26, 24, 24 is what he's done the last 3 weeks, and that 26, I think Montgomery got hurt about halfway through that game.
Yes. So there is not like if you draft anybody else in the first round, there's no situation involving them that makes them better. Like there's no injury that's going to make them better. Jahmyr Gibbs is the one player where we still are missing like 30 to 40% of the fantasy points possible with the player. And that's why he's so high for me.
Which is crazy because he is the RB3 at the end of this year.
And obviously I'll just jump to my number 3 because I think he's your number 1. The only player I put above him was Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, Saquon's 1 for me.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we get too far away from Jahmyr Gibbs, I did want to say there are, I think, 2 holes you can poke with Jahmyr Gibbs. Number 1 is David Montgomery still there, still kind of holding down that every down workhorse potential for Gibbs. The second thing is what happens to this offense if Ben Johnson's not there anymore. I think that would be like the only very small concern for Gibbs, where like those are the two things for me that I that make Bijan be the very slight number 2 over the Jahmyr Gibbs number 3.